She was the janitor no one noticed, until one snowy night, she stepped on stage and played a piece so powerful, it left the entire room speechless. But who was this quiet woman? And why had she been hiding her brilliance for years? Stay with us as we uncover the breathtaking true story of Claire Bennett, a forgotten prodigy who turned silence into symphony. May we all be protected from misfortune, and may this story serve as a reminder to never judge a person by appearances alone. The grand marble hallways of Armitage School of Performing Arts echoed with the clamor of ambition. Piano chords crashing from open practice rooms, the shriek of a missed violin note, and the shrill commands of instructors pushing perfection. Amid this chaos, Claire Bennett moved unnoticed. She wore her usual attire, a gray cardigan that hung a little too loose and black trousers flecked with chalk from the classroom boards she cleaned. A faded school ID hung around her neck, clipped to a retractable string. It labeled her simply, facilities staff. To most students, Claire was furniture. To most faculty, she was a mop on legs. As she pushed a cleaning cart down the west wing, she paused in front of room 212, the piano recital room. A low, rich sound crept under the door, the final notes of something dramatic. She couldn't help herself. Quietly, she opened the door just a crack. Inside, Damian Reyes, Armitage's golden boy, sat at the Bosendorfer Grand like it owed him money. The boy was all sharp angles and smug precision. His hands moved fast, maybe too fast, and when he finished, he flipped his hair and grinned at his own reflection in the piano lid. Claire waited until he left. Then, like a whisper, she slid into the room. She wiped a smudge off the keys, more for habit than hygiene. Her fingers hovered. She shouldn't, but the silence begged for something. She sat, and she played. The piece she chose was Rachmaninoff, but not the basic prelude every junior could handle. This was symphonic dances, a monster of a transcription, something only the mad or the masterful would attempt without warm-up. Her fingers moved with fluid elegance, weaving harmonies that hung in the air like perfume. The piano sang, not perfectly, not flawlessly, but with a kind of aching honesty. She didn't hear the door creak open behind her. Whoa! Claire turned sharply. Damien leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. I didn't know the janitor doubled as entertainment, he said with a smirk. Didn't think old pianos could still play themselves. Claire stood up quickly, flustered. Sorry, I shouldn't be in here. You think, he sneered, you play a couple pretty chords and think you're ready for the winter gala stage? She said nothing, just dipped her head and quietly slipped past him, her cheeks burning. Behind her, Damien muttered, Stick to mops, lady. But Claire didn't hear the last part. She was already halfway down the corridor, heart pounding. Not from shame, but from the ghost of something waking up inside her. Something she had locked away 8 years ago and buried deep. That night, in her small rented apartment above the deli on 7th Street, Claire pulled an old velvet-lined case from under her bed. Inside, her fingers brushed the photo tucked into the lid. Her younger self, on a stage in Vienna, hands lifted above the keys, captured in that fleeting moment before magic. Clara Bell, the caption had read once in Time magazine. America's last great piano prodigy. Claire closed the case with a soft click. She wasn't ready, not yet, but something inside her had begun to stir. The following morning, Armitage bustled with even more tension than usual. The winter gala was less than 2 weeks away, and every hallway seemed charged with the same anxious rhythm. Footsteps quick, voices clipped, pianos played with desperation rather than joy. Claire moved silently through the practice building, wiping down windows, emptying bins, and adjusting music stands left askew by frantic students. No one spoke to her. That was fine. She preferred it that way, until, Excuse me, Ms. Bennett. Claire looked up from her mop. The speaker was a small girl, no older than 17, with a dark braid and soft, round eyes. She wore a green sweater 2 sizes too big and clutched a sheet of music like it might tear in her hands. Yes, Claire said gently. I heard you play yesterday, the girl said quickly, eyes wide. I was in the hallway. It was It was beautiful. Claire blinked. That wasn't meant for anyone to hear. I'm sorry, the girl said immediately. I wasn't spying, I swear. Look, I've been trying to learn this piece for the gala. She held out the sheet music. It was the Rachmaninoff transcription. And I can't get this part right, no matter how hard I try. Claire glanced at the score. The measures circled in pencil were familiar to her fingers, almost like muscle memory aching to respond. What's your name? Claire asked softly. Emma Ruiz. Claire studied the nervous student for a moment, then gestured toward a nearby practice room. Let's see what you've got. Inside, Emma took a seat at the upright piano while Claire pulled a folding chair beside her. Emma started to play, but her hands were tense, shoulders stiff. The tempo rushed. Stop, Claire said, her voice calm but firm. Close your eyes. Play the melody in your head first. Hear it before you try to speak it. Emma hesitated, then did as instructed. Now again, but this time don't fight the piano. Let it breathe. She played again, slower, gentler, and the notes began to flow more naturally. Still flawed, still hesitant, but unmistakably improved. Emma turned to Claire, her mouth open. That actually felt better. Claire smiled softly. You're not wrestling the music anymore. You're dancing with it. There was a long pause before Emma whispered, You're not just a janitor, are you? Claire looked away. What I was doesn't matter. It does to me, Emma said quietly. You're the only person who's helped me without making me feel stupid. Just then, the door swung open. Dr. Yvonne Keller stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes sharp as broken glass. Her designer heels clicked as she walked in. What is going on here? She demanded. Miss Ruiz, you have assigned instructors. Why are you wasting time with support staff? Emma stood up, flustered. Claire interrupted calmly. She asked me for help. I didn't offer it. Dr. Keller's lips curled into a condescending smile. Well, let's avoid this kind of confusion in the future. Ms. Bennett has enough on her plate with floors and windows. Musical coaching is quite beyond her job description. She turned to Emma. Come, we have no time for distractions. Claire watched as Emma gathered her sheet music, her shoulders sinking. The door closed behind them with a quiet thud. Alone again, Claire sat still for a long time. Her hands, resting in her lap, twitched ever so slightly, as if remembering what they used to be. 2 days later, the faculty lounge was abuzz with murmurs. Damian Reyes had apparently stormed out of a rehearsal with Dr. Keller after she harshly critiqued his interpretation of Rachmaninoff's second movement. Too romantic, she'd barked. You're not courting a lover. You're commanding a room. Claire overheard the whispers while cleaning coffee cups left behind on the long walnut table. She didn't look up, didn't flinch, just kept rinsing, drying, stacking. But she heard everything. Later that afternoon, as she collected sheet music from the rehearsal wing, she nearly collided with a familiar green sweater rounding the corner. Emma, Claire said, surprised. Emma looked around, then whispered, I need your help, please. Claire frowned. Emma, I'm sorry, she rushed. I know what Dr. Keller said, but she doesn't hear me. She listens for what she wants, not what I have. Claire hesitated. She knew this feeling too well. I won't get better if I don't understand. And you make me understand, Emma said. Please. Claire looked down at the folded sheet music in Emma's hand. The same passage, the same notes. Come before first light, Claire said quietly. Practice room 7. I clean it early. We won't be disturbed. At 6 a.m., the sky still bruised with indigo, Emma arrived at the side entrance and slipped in through the janitor's door. Claire was already there, tuning the silence of the room like a conductor waiting for her orchestra. Emma sat. Claire nodded once. The lesson began. They worked in small phrases, dissecting tempo, reshaping dynamics, whispering meaning into notes that had sounded hollow before. Claire didn't just teach finger placement, she taught feeling. She taught listening. She taught silence between notes. You're pushing here, Claire said softly, pointing. You don't trust the pause. Emma looked confused. It's just a rest. Claire shook her head. No, it's breath. It's tension. That one beat of silence. That's what breaks hearts. Emma tried again, and this time something changed. By the end of the week, Emma's progress had become noticeable, even to Dr. Keller. During a group rehearsal, the notoriously exacting instructor actually paused to glance at Emma with narrowed eyes. That was less offensive than usual, she muttered before turning to scold another student. Emma beamed in spite of herself, but not everyone was pleased. Damian Reyes had noticed the shift, and he didn't like it. After rehearsal, he cornered Emma near the vending machines. You think you're going to steal the spotlight now? He sneered. Emma took a step back. What are you talking about? I see what you're doing. Sucking up to the staff to get ahead. Playing the poor girl card. Nice strategy. I'm just trying to improve, Emma said, voice trembling. You're wasting your time, he said, leaning in. You're not a star. You're a shadow, and you'll stay that way. He walked off before she could respond. Emma stood there, shaking, the weight of self-doubt threatening to crush the confidence she'd only just started to believe in. That night, Emma knocked on Claire's apartment door for the first time. She'd never been there before. Claire, surprised but calm, let her in. I want to quit, Emma said immediately, dropping onto the worn couch. Damian's right. I'll never be enough. Claire sat beside her. She didn't try to argue. Instead, she pulled something from her bookshelf. An old program from the Vienna Symphony Hall. On the cover, Clara Bell, age 27. Rachmaninoff's Symphonic Dances. Emma blinked. Wait, that's you. Claire nodded. Emma's mouth fell open. But you said. I said what I needed to say to keep my peace. Emma stared. You're her. I read about you. You were the next great hope. They said you disappeared. I did, Claire said quietly. I fell. Hard. On stage, in front of thousands. My hands gave out. My mind cracked. And when I tried to come back, the world wasn't patient. Emma looked at her, eyes wide. Why are you helping me? Claire smiled gently. Because I see the fight in you. And I remember what it's like to feel alone in a room full of applause meant for someone else. For a moment, they sat in silence. Two pianists from two generations, bound not by fame, but by understanding. Claire stood and walked to her piano, dusted from disuse. Come, she said. Play. Tonight, you don't play for them. You play for you. The days leading up to the winter gala blurred into a rhythm of secrecy and resolve. Every morning, before dawn broke over the city, Emma met Claire in practice room 7. By day, she rehearsed as usual under Dr. Keller's strict oversight, blending back into the ranks of the ordinary. But in the hours before the school stirred, something extraordinary was taking shape. Claire's coaching was unlike anything Emma had ever known. It wasn't about competition. It wasn't about perfection. It was about uncovering the soul inside the piece. Damian plays for dominance, Claire once said. You must play for truth. Emma began to understand. One morning, after a particularly expressive run-through, Claire placed her hand gently on the girl's shoulder. You're almost ready. Emma's brows furrowed. Ready for what? Claire paused, then said softly, to be seen. Meanwhile, whispers were beginning to swirl through the conservatory. She's improving too fast, murmured a voice in the library. Did someone new start coaching her? Asked another in the locker room. And then, there was Damian Reyes watching everything. After another failed attempt at mastering the thunderous third section of his Rachmaninoff piece, he threw his sheet music across the rehearsal room. Dr. Keller pinched the bridge of her nose. Your playing is sloppy, Damian. He clenched his fists. Maybe because you're too busy mentoring Emma Ruiz now? Keller snapped her gaze up. Excuse me? Don't play dumb. She's improving like she's got a ghost teacher. You know it's not from you. Dr. Keller rose from her seat. Miss Ruiz is benefiting from the rigor of my program, same as you. She's getting something else, Damian hissed. And I'll find out what. That same evening, under cover of twilight, Claire and Emma met for what had become a nightly ritual. But tonight, Claire was different, quieter, more contemplative. "You've grown more in 2 weeks than some do in 2 years," Claire said softly, running her fingers across the piano keys like she was testing their warmth. Emma beamed. "Because of you." Claire didn't smile back. "Because of you. I only held up a mirror." Emma tilted her head. "Claire, why don't you play anymore? Not just for me, but for everyone." Claire looked away. "The last time I stepped on a stage, I failed. Publicly, spectacularly. My hands locked, my heart froze, and all those people I thought respected me, they disappeared. But you're better now. My hands are healed," she admitted. "But the trust? That takes longer." Emma hesitated, then said, "What if you didn't have to be alone on that stage this time?" Claire looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted behind her eyes. The next morning, as students filled the practice halls and instructors barked critiques, Damien slipped away from class, following a hunch. He made his way to the lower wing, past the laundry bins and broken music stands, until he reached practice room 7. He pressed his ear to the door. Inside, he heard a piano not just played but mastered. Notes flowed like water, phrases shaped with maturity far beyond any student's reach. And then, a voice. "Don't rush it. Listen to the silence. Trust the breath." It wasn't Emma's. Damien's eyes narrowed. He pulled out his phone and started recording. That afternoon, Dr. Keller summoned Claire to her office. Claire entered, unflinching. The room smelled of polished wood and tension. Dr. Keller held up a phone. "Care to explain this?" The audio played. Claire's voice, clear and calm, instructing Emma through a nuanced interpretation of a notoriously difficult passage. Then, Claire's own playing, unmistakably brilliant. Claire said nothing. "I could dismiss you for this," Dr. Keller hissed. "You've crossed lines, interfered with instruction, misled this institution." Claire looked at her and said simply, "No one was being misled, not until now." Keller stood. "You think just because you used to be Clarabelle, you can waltz in here and rewrite the rules?" Claire's face didn't change. "I don't want to rewrite them. I want to break them." Dr. Keller pointed to the door. "Leave. Before I forget, this is still my school." Claire didn't move. "It stopped being yours the moment you stopped listening." With that, she turned and walked out, calm, graceful, unashamed. Down the hallway, Emma waited. "What happened?" Claire exhaled. "Everything that needed to." The day of the winter gala arrived with snowfall, soft, white, and silent, like the hush before a symphony's first note. The Armitage School had been transformed. Velvet ropes lined the entrance. A red carpet stretched across the foyer. Donors, alumni, and critics filed into the recital hall, dressed in tailored suits and glittering gowns. Conversations buzzed with names, expectations, and quiet gossip. Backstage, the tension was thick. Damien paced in the shadows, his injured wrist wrapped but functional. His performance was scheduled to open the evening. "Ready?" Dr. Keller asked, approaching in her black evening dress, clipboard in hand. "I'm always ready," he said, though his voice betrayed the strain beneath his arrogance. Across the hall, Emma sat alone, clutching her sheet music. Her name was near the bottom of the program, almost an afterthought. She wasn't expected to shine. That was the plan. But she had her own plan. She had told Claire the night before, "I don't care what they expect. I'm going to play like it's the last piece I'll ever perform." Claire had simply smiled and said, "Then you'll play with truth." In the audience, Claire sat near the back, dressed in a black blazer, her hair pinned neatly for once. She was anonymous, nearly invisible among the gowns and applause, just the way she liked it. The house lights dimmed. The stage lights rose. Damien stepped out first. He bowed, sat, and began. His playing was sharp, confident, but hollow. Each note was perfect in structure, but empty in meaning. A technical marvel without a soul. The audience clapped politely, Claire watched, impassive. The program continued. Some students stumbled, others dazzled. None of it moved her, until Emma Ruiz stepped onto the stage. She wore a simple navy dress and no jewelry. No airs, no pretension. Just her and the piano. The spotlight seemed to waver, then settle as if recognizing something rare. She took a long breath, and she began. The first notes were soft, unsure, but deliberate, like the voice of someone learning to speak their truth out loud. Then came the melody, aching, tender, brave. Her fingers danced, sometimes faltering, but never lying. She made mistakes, but they meant something. In the balcony, a woman whispered to her companion, "She's not polished, but she's real." The hall was silent, not out of judgment, but reverence. By the time Emma reached the final movement, her hands moved with a quiet power. She didn't dominate the piano. She communed with it. She struck the final chord with trembling strength, and then sat in the silence that followed, eyes closed, chest rising and falling. Then applause. Not thunderous, not immediate, but honest, sincere. Claire stood. Emma saw her from the stage, smiled softly, and bowed. Backstage, Emma was greeted with silence. Some faculty nodded stiffly. A few students offered small compliments. Then Damien approached. "Nice job," he said. "Didn't know janitors were allowed to train soloists now." Emma's smile faded. "She's more than that." "She was more," Damien corrected. Past tense. Emma didn't respond. She didn't need to. As guests filtered out into the snowy evening, Robert Whitmore, chairman of the board, approached Dr. Keller in the lobby. "That girl, Ruiz, where's she been hiding?" Keller forced a tight smile. "A promising student. I've been guiding her closely." "Good," he said. "Our donors like authenticity. And that piece she played? Who arranged her interpretation?" "She's had some unconventional guidance," Keller admitted. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. "That janitor, what's her name? Bennett?" Keller's jaw tightened. "Let's speak Monday," he said. "Talent like that doesn't appear in a vacuum." Outside the school, Claire stood in the falling snow, waiting, her breath visible in the cold. Emma stepped out, coat over her arms, cheeks flushed. "You were magnificent," Claire said simply. Emma nodded. "I didn't do it alone." Claire reached into her bag and handed her something wrapped in velvet. Emma unwrapped it. A metronome, worn wooden, engraved on the bottom. "CB. It kept me grounded for years," Claire said. "Now it's yours." Emma clutched it, eyes glistening. Then she said what neither of them had spoken aloud. "You're not done, are you?" Claire looked up at the falling snow. "No," she whispered. "I don't think I am." The Monday after the gala brought a strange kind of silence to Armitage, like the calm after a storm that hadn't yet revealed its damage. Claire arrived early as usual, keys jangling on her belt, pushing her cart down the gleaming corridor. But this time, the silence was pierced by something unusual. People noticing her. "Morning, Miss Bennett," said a junior violinist she barely knew. Two instructors passed her near the library and paused mid-conversation, eyes lingering a beat too long. In the faculty lounge, heads turned. Claire said nothing, but her spine straightened just slightly. It wasn't pride. It was clarity. Something had shifted. That afternoon, Dr. Yvonne Keller sat stiffly at the long mahogany table in the boardroom. The other chairs were filled with department heads, the dean, and Chairman Whitmore. They were reviewing gala outcomes, donor satisfaction, and upcoming recruitment goals. When the conversation turned to student performance, Whitmore leaned forward. "There's been a lot of buzz about Emma Ruiz." Dr. Keller gave a diplomatic nod. "She showed promise." "And who's been working with her?" Keller hesitated. "Unofficially, one of our support staff has been involved." Whitmore folded his hands. "Ah yes, the janitor who's also a ghost from the conservatory world. Claire Bennett." Gasps flickered around the table. The name was unfamiliar until he clarified. "Formerly Clara Bell." The air went still. "You're telling me," said Dean Alder slowly, "that Clara Bell has been walking our halls for months and no one knew?" Dr. Keller opened her mouth, then closed it. "She didn't announce herself," she muttered. "She didn't need to," Whitmore replied. "She made herself known through Emma." Later that day, Claire was summoned. She walked into the boardroom with the same grace she once brought to a concert stage, her cleaning uniform oddly regal under the bright lights. Chairman Whitmore gestured for her to sit. "We owe you an apology," he began. Claire raised a hand gently. "No apologies needed. I came here to listen, to heal. I wasn't looking to be found." "But you were," Whitmore said, "and we'd be fools not to recognize what that means." Dean Alder leaned forward. "We'd like to offer you a position, officially, something far more fitting than custodial duties." Claire smiled faintly. "A teaching position?" "More than that," Whitmore said. "An artist in residence, mentor to our students, creative freedom, autonomy." Claire looked around the table. Some faces still doubted. Others were humbled. She didn't need their approval, but she recognized the opportunity. "For one condition," she said. "And that is?" asked Keller, her tone brittle. "I choose who I mentor, and how. No interference." The room fell silent. Then, "Agreed," said Whitmore. Emma was waiting by the practice rooms when Claire returned. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation. "What did they say?" she asked. Claire leaned against the wall. "They offered me a position." Emma's jaw dropped. "Wait, really? What kind?" "Official. Permanent. With keys to the building and everything." Emma laughed, then hugged her impulsively. Claire stiffened at first, then hugged her back. It had been a long time. That evening, Claire stood alone in the recital hall. The house was empty, the lights dimmed, just her and the Bosendorfer. She sat, not to practice, to remember. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and she played not Rachmaninoff, not Liszt, but something of her own. A quiet composition filled with longing, loss, and discovery. A melody that wandered, faltered, and found its way. Footsteps echoed behind her. She didn't stop playing. Emma appeared in the doorway holding a notebook. "Is that one of yours?" Claire nodded. "It was. It is." Emma took a seat in the back row. Claire continued, not for applause, not for redemption, but because the music was finally hers again. 3 weeks had passed since Claire's formal appointment as artist-in-residence at Armitage. Her new office, tucked in the corner of the East Wing, was small but sunlit. Framed concert posters of her past tours still leaned unmounted against the walls. The grand piano in the corner, a gift from the board, had already become her second heart. She was still getting used to people knocking on her door instead of pretending she didn't exist. "Professor Bennett?" came a tentative voice one morning. Claire turned. It was Maya Lin, a freshman cellist with a reputation for anxiety and a bowing arm that trembled under pressure. "I was wondering if you ever work with strings." Claire smiled. "I work with anyone who listens." News of Claire's mentorship spread like wildfire. Her unofficial studio became a sanctuary for misfits and late bloomers, kids with raw talent and no champions. She didn't lecture. She didn't dictate. She asked questions and expected her students to find their own answers. Some faculty bristled. "She's creating chaos," Dr. Keller muttered in a department meeting. "There's no structure to her teaching." Dean Alder replied without looking up from his notepad. "Funny, that chaos is producing the most authentic performances we've heard in years." Keller's jaw clenched. "It's undermining the traditional curriculum." Whitmore, seated at the head of the table, raised an eyebrow. "Maybe the tradition needs revisiting." One afternoon, Claire found Emma in practice room 3, surrounded by blank sheet music. "I'm writing something," Emma said. "Not for class, just for myself." Claire walked to the piano and sat beside her. "Play it." Emma hesitated, then began. The melody was rough, unfinished, but brimming with emotion. Claire listened, then nodded slowly. You're starting to speak in your own language. Emma looked up, surprised. It's messy. Good, Claire said. Truth usually is. But peace never lasts long at Armitage. 1 week before the spring showcase, Damien Reyes cornered Emma in the student cafe. I hope you're not expecting another standing ovation, he said with a forced smile. That trick's only good once. Emma looked at him calmly. You're scared I'll do it again. He scoffed. You're not competition. Emma leaned forward. I'm not trying to compete with you, Damien. I'm just done playing beneath you. He opened his mouth to fire back, but paused. For the first time, there was no smugness behind his stare, only uncertainty. That night, as Claire walked past the empty recital hall, she heard a familiar passage. Rachmaninoff? Slow, deliberate, unsure. She peeked through the door. Damien was alone, struggling through the second movement. She entered silently and waited until he noticed. He jumped up. I didn't ask for help. I didn't offer, she said, voice calm. You play like you're angry at the piano. I'm not angry, he muttered. Then you're afraid of it. He looked at her, startled. Claire sat beside him. You're trying to conquer it. But music isn't war, Damien. It's conversation. You don't need to dominate. You need to listen. He didn't respond, but he didn't walk away. The spring showcase approached like a tide. Inevitable, unstoppable. Students rehearsed into the night. Flyers lined the halls. Parents RSVP'd. Faculty held breath. And for the first time in years, Claire Bennett would be performing too. Not as Clara Bell. Not as a symbol of recovery. Just as herself. The night of the spring showcase arrived with a quiet electricity in the air. Armitage's recital hall was filled to capacity. Parents, donors, critics, and students settled into velvet seats, whispering under the glimmering chandeliers. There was no red carpet, no grand fanfare this time. Just a program printed in soft gray ink, with a final listing that made some raise their eyebrows. Claire Bennett, original composition. A room of her own piano solo. Backstage, Emma paced nervously, holding her cello close to her chest. Her ensemble group was opening the second act, and she could already feel her heart thudding against her ribs. Claire found her by the tuning bench. Deep breath, she said softly. Emma nodded. You okay? Claire smiled faintly. Not even a little. They both laughed. The showcase began with warmth. Student quartets, duets, and solos blooming on stage like petals in spring. The audience responded with generous applause, touched not by perfection, but by sincerity. And then, during the second act, Emma Ruiz stepped on stage with her chamber group. They played an original arrangement Emma had co-written with Claire. The piece was raw and sweeping, full of open space and unresolved chords that tugged at the heart. Her cello voice, once shy and unsure, now soared. In the wings, Claire listened, misty-eyed. When it ended, the applause was real, no pity, no politics. Just recognition. Then it was time. Claire stood behind the curtain, alone. Her name had been called. The stage manager gave her the nod. She stepped into the light. The audience, expecting someone else entirely, went still. Some leaned forward. A few whispered. The more informed among them already knew. Clara Bell had returned. But Claire wasn't here to reclaim an old crown. She sat at the Bosendorfer, adjusted the bench. Then silence. Then she played. The piece was her own. A room of her own. It told a story without words. A story of leaving, of breaking, of wandering through darkened corridors and finding, somewhere in the dust and forgotten corners, a piece of self still shining. Her hands moved not with bravado, but with clarity, grace, strength. There were no fireworks, no dizzying runs, just the truth note by note. In the final passage, she let a single chord linger. It rang out like a bell long buried under snow, now uncovered and whole. And then she finished. No bows, no grand gestures, just a long, long silence. Then thunderous applause, not polite, not cautious, but joyous. The audience stood. Even Dr. Keller, after a moment of pride swallowing hesitation, rose from her seat. Backstage, students watched in awe. In the second row, Emma wiped away a tear. Claire stood, bowed once, then stepped off stage, not as a fallen star resurrected, but as a mentor, an artist, and a woman who had reclaimed her voice. A week later, Claire's masterclass list had a waiting list 30 names long. Dr. Keller took a sabbatical. Emma Ruiz received an offer to study composition in Paris. And above Practice Room 7, a new plaque was mounted. This space is dedicated to those who find their voice in silence. Claire Bennett. The Hidden Symphony was never about fame or redemption or proving the doubters wrong. It was about finding music where no one listens and finally being heard. Sometimes the most powerful performances don't come from the spotlight, but from the shadows. Claire Bennett's journey wasn't about reclaiming glory. It was about rediscovering her purpose and passing the torch to those still searching for theirs. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, the Hidden Symphony reminds us, the greatest music often plays quietly until someone dares to hear it. Before we close, let's take a moment to pray. May we all be protected from arrogance and misjudgment. May we be shielded from harm and guided toward truth and kindness. And may this story inspire us all to believe, not in appearances, but in the true strength that lives inside each of us. If the story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share this with someone who's been underestimated, because sometimes the strongest people are the ones who never needed to shout. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever surprised someone with your hidden strength? We'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong, stay humble, and stay true.